So it's been 2 years of disappointments. 2 years ago, my oldest son, crossed that magical boundary where he is now qualified to operate a vehicle. And so, he desires one, and we had a friend that actually donated one, his very first vehicle. It had been sitting for a while, but he went, hey, it's in good working condition, at least when we when we parked it. So we went and we did all the paperwork, we transferred everything, we paid all those fees. We went and we picked it up. There was just a little bit of gas in there because they had just left it sit there. I was like, well, I'll drive it for now until we kind of see what's going on here and see how this is going. And so we went down the road, and it was kind of doing okay, although it's really good that it's going downhill. Ran really great downhill. Made it all the way to the gas station, filled up the whole tank, glad to put out that money. And we pulled out of there. It kind of putt out of there, putt a little bit less. We got to the light, and I was like, I better keep on going straight. I'm not sure if I can get going again. We got off onto a side road, and I'm like, maybe we should think about going to the garage with this thing and having it once over. And we were going up one of the back roads there up the hill, and putt, and it died right there. 5 minutes, 1 mile, we made it. We babied that thing all the way to the garage eventually, and baby it, I mean literally that. And there they gave it its last rites. It never moved again. So I'm like, well, that's just kind of the way it goes, right? We had high hopes, but alas, just a bad draw there. So we bought another vehicle. It needed a little bit of work, but Matt was helping us out, and so we got the parts into that, and it was good. And that ran for, a couple weeks. And then he was going to a scouting event at the country club, made the turn into the driveway, and it died. Like, not putt, died right then and there. Like, luckily he crossed, he made the turn, but he was right at the end of the driveway, backing up all the traffic and everything else like that. Fortunately, there were some four-wheelers. They dragged him up into the parking lot. Like, this thing never started again. We thought it was the computer. We thought there was some of this and there was some of that. Turned out to be some type of wiring thing, not just the computer, but the wiring. And like, you're going to spend half a lifetime trying to track that down on that old of a car. And so we got rid of that. Gave last rites. So Dad went with them for the third time, checking out a vehicle. We were getting kind of desperate. We just come up on some stuff that you need a vehicle. I kicked the tires and going, I think it's pretty good. It's pretty good. It's probably in our price range. I think it'll be a good thing. Let me test drive it. And I drove it hard, and I was like, I think it'll be okay. The guy's like, there's a couple issues. I'm like, no, it'll be okay. It's all right, because I know this stuff. No. It's made it how long, Ben? 6 months. That's about when somebody noticed, hey, it's been out of inspection for about 5 months. There's no state police in here, right? I'm like, all right, well, I don't know how we missed that, but we'll get this up. So I'll take it into the garage for you. I go to the car. The front tires are bald as a baby's bottom. I don't even know how they're holding air. I'm like, oh my goodness, what in the world? And so we get tires. But it takes a couple days for those to come in, and finally we come back. I'm like, all right, did you kind of give it a once over? Yeah. All this stuff needs to be replaced now. Worth probably more than what the car is. 3 cars, 2 years, 6 months, 2 weeks. That's all he's been driving in 2 years' time. One disappointment after another. Stresses me out. I hate cars. I'm not a mechanic at all. Did not miss my calling. That's what happens in life. You've probably experienced this type of stuff, that where it's just like, I can't believe it. How did we get to this place? How am I at this spot at this time in my life? We have things that kind of come along and just kind of sweep us away, situational. These cars are a perfect thing. There was, a little bit of everything. They had been given to us. The last one was my fault. I bought a car that we probably should never have bought. I made a bad decision, but just kind of in the midst of it all, it's just kind of one bad, disappointing thing after another. And so, even if you're going, hey, you know what? I have made the right choices. I've even put myself in a pretty good place. What, in the last 10 years, for crying out loud, guys? We had a major economic downturn back around 2010. We had COVID come along. It swept everybody, right? Even if I'm just doing what I think I should be doing, life can just kind of knock things sideways and bring these type of disappointments. We have disappointments from other people, right? People that let us down, people that fail us, people that do us wrong or get us in a bad place. I thought I was doing right, and because of their mistakes, it's put me into a bad jam, and suddenly now I'm in a compromised position. But then there's the other type of other. That's you, right? When other people go, you are the disappointment. Right? They're not happy with where you're at and the decisions that you've made and what you've made of yourself. We all have a mother-in-law. And now, I have the best mother-in-law in the world. If you're watching, I love you. She's like, I hit the lottery on that one. Great, best mother-in-law ever. But, you have those people in your life that kind of go, you shouldn't have chosen that. Right? If you had thought about this a little bit more, if you weren't so selfish and immature, you would be in a better place. People that let you know you are a disappointment. You have led yourself into a bad spot. Now, we're Americans. By birthright, we have our comeuppance. Do we use that word? Comeuppance? All the time. Man, I'm telling you what, I had an old dad, so I got an old vocabulary, right? We push back on this. We have figured this thing out of going, who are you to tell me that, I don't measure up, that I'm a disappointment? Forget you. Let's talk about your flaws, right? That's the American way. That's the American dream. I'm going to push back on you. And yet there are also these types of disappointments that kind of burrow down into our soul, and they just kind of gnaw on us, right? The kind that just, even when we kind of give ourselves a break, or we go, oh, well, I'll just kind of let that go, it just kind of gnaws on us. I think of a lot of people that I've counseled that have gone through a divorce. I'm not picking on divorced people. I'm just going, this is a great example here. People that have come to the end of a marriage, that even in cases where they went, that was probably for the best that we broke apart. There's this kind of lingering gnaw on their soul of just going, it didn't work. And with any marriage, there's always plenty of blame to go around. And it's just hard. Even in, justifiable situations where it just is kind of like, I failed, right? It's a disappointment. How did we get here? And whether you've gone through a divorce or not, we have these situations in our life that we go, man, we can blame other people, we can blame situations, but at the bottom, I know it's me. I am where I'm at. Yep, it's true there are some other folks that helped me along, but I've made my choices here, right? The truth is that the Democrats are right. There is societal sin. There is systemic sin. They didn't create the idea. It's actually a biblical idea. You need to check your Bible if you don't believe in that. It is. There are other forces that can wreck our life. We're awash in it. But the Republicans are right too. And you are responsible for your life and your choices. And the libertarians are right. Because you got to own your stuff, because I'm too busy with mine, so don't bother me. Right? We are just in this wad of disappointment. We pressure our kids into going, you've got to build your life the right way. You've got to work hard in school, and you've got to take these courses, and that's going to lead to this, and that will lead to that. If you do well in sports, that will lead to this, and that will lead to that. And we just kind of teach them kind of by osmosis that if I stack this stuff together like Lego blocks, I will end up with this life without any disappointments. And we set them up for in their 20s and 30s for life to come along and their own bad decisions to come along and just smash that Lego building to pieces. And I'm telling you the truth, one of the most fundamental truths of all reality. There is nothing that hurts more than stepping on broken pieces of Lego. It just tears your feet up, right? That's what our kids are. They thought we were going to get to this if I do all the right steps, but life and us have a way of breaking it all apart. And we go, yeah. Now, we don't like to talk about it. We like to do something about it. And so we figure out ways of coping. Alcohol consumption usually grows about by 1 or 2% a year. In 2020, it grew by 25%, alcohol consumption, because the disappointment was overwhelming. The gap, it was a big life thing that kind of came along. Yep, we drank because of that, but I bet you it was also about the choices of what we made and how we were dealing with it, that we turned to the bottle. For women, 41% increase. The age group that grew the most, 35 to 44, right? The people that are broken down and life isn't going well for them and they have no skills and no, those are the people that are at the prime of their life. 35 to 44, you still have energy, for crying out loud, right? You can do things, you got choices, and they're the ones that drank the most. Because of disappointments. Fortunately, we figured out some vaping, because that's really coming in and saving us. I don't say this. Apparently, there are articles that say this is better than literal smoking, but it is chock full of nicotine because they care about you. Right? One of the most addictive substances on the planet. Here. Make yourself feel better forever and ever and ever, because you'll never want to quit. Let's not even talk about how destructive that is for, under 20-year-olds. We don't have time for that. Yeah, coping. Lots of different things. These are just kind of two tips of the iceberg. But there is a solution. I bet you have seen it. I'm seeing it everywhere. It's all over TV. It barely can make it through a commercial break without seeing this. On YouTube, every other video, seeing this. It is going to save us. Sports betting. Look at how happy those people are. I mean, did they buff their faces? Good night. They're shining. They're glowing. This will fix everything if we would just bet. Now, at first I was kind of like, yeah, bet on scores. Well, that's not quite tricky enough. Let's do the spread. Do you know how insane this has gotten? Are they going to make the next first down? Is he going to make the next field goal? Ridiculous stuff. All I know is I haven't seen this much racial reconciliation since Black Lives Matter. I think they should get a piece of this action and start a betting crew. Because if it makes them people this happy, it's got to be right. For crying out loud. Did you catch how fast, after the NFL allowed this, because the NFL had to go this route because they didn't make enough money. And they were scraping the bottom at $10 billion a year and went, man, we've got to take more of their money. And so they came up with this. Did you catch how fast? I think it was in the first month, they were already putting out commercials of going, Please don't overbet and have to sell your family and your house and your cars. Set limits. We just only want to take half your money, not all of it. Yeah. What I've noticed is all of this stuff is directed right at us guys, us men. I wonder why that is. Have you noticed it? Are we so bored and dulled and lifeless and disappointed with our lot that we are willing to let somebody bleed us dry just so that we can capture a little bit of fake aliveness? I wonder how much disappointment there is among men. All these things we are coping with. We go, we don't need God, we don't need help, and yet we are left with this ache, this bind. We medicate ourselves, and here we are, the most blessed country in the history of the planet, and we are the most unhappy. The mental health crisis is crazy nuts. So there's this interesting story in Jesus' ministry. It's not towards the end. Normally we'd talk about death and resurrection. This actually happens early in his ministry. It's a rather weird story, since Matt's already brought up weirdness. This is a very weird story, but I think it's going to give us some insight into our condition. So Jesus is at the beginning of his ministry. They're still kind of trying to figure him out. And so he gets invited to one of the religious leaders' homes for a meal. Now, normally this would be a thing of honor, of going, oh, please come. We want to honor you. We respect you. But that's not really what's going on here. This guy is basically checking Jesus out. He's like, we want to know if you're legit or are you just another disappointment like everybody else. And so this stuffy old Pharisee, he invites Jesus, he brings him in, they have a little banquet there. Now, they didn't do it right like us. Like we figured out tables and chairs, that's right. These are the jokes, folks. Come on, loosen up. All right, they did it Greek style, so they had a very low table and they would lounge at the table. So you'd basically kind of like be all stretched out. For me, my feet are about a half mile away, right? I'm close to the food, but my feet are way out there. And so it's kind of like a pinwheel, right? Everybody's kind of up close to the food and your feet are further out. That's important to note because there's one character in this story that was unexpected. We think it's kind of weird, but this lady shows up at this. She's not part of the meal. She's not part of the party or anything like that. Nobody knows who she is in one sense. It's not like, oh, that's Sally, right? No, she just kind of shows up. We would go, that's super weird. Like if during your Easter meal, I just kind of showed up, walked right in, walked up to the table. Everybody's like, I don't know who he is, but maybe if he eats, he'll leave, They kind of ignored her. I suspect that normally the Pharisee would have probably have dismissed her, but for some reason, she comes in and everyone leaves her alone and she stands at the feet of Jesus. She's not interacting. She's not engaging with the party. Remember, he's lounging, so his feet are like kind of way away from him, and she's just kind of there. That's when it takes a weirder turn. This woman begins to weep. And Luke writes that her tears fall on Jesus's dirty feet. They're dusty and dirty from walking around. And her tears begin to just kind of mix with the mud and almost kind of like washing. And she must have knelt down at one point because it talks about her washing his feet with her tears. She didn't bring any water. She didn't bring a towel. She just was weeping at his feet. And we're kind of like, man, this is kind of really weird stuff. And she didn't have a towel, so she actually begins to dry his feet, wipe the mud and the dirt off with her own hair. We're like, whoa, we've gone into bizarre land. Now, the Pharisee sees this, and normally he would have probably thrown the lady out right from the get-go because this lady was known in one particular way, not as Sally, but as kind of like one of those women. Right? She had a reputation. We know what type of life you live. It is not a good life. In fact, the story says she was a sinful woman. She made a lot of bad choices. She is the disappointment in this story. I'm sure there is a mother somewhere in the background of this story going, this is the daughter that I raised. This is how you're going to behave. This is the life that you're making for yourself, the shame that you're bringing on the family. I'm sure she actually has probably some bad breaks in her life. Women were very vulnerable. They didn't have a lot of power or rights, and so she probably was mistreated and put in compromising situations. She probably compounded that by making bad choices herself, taking an easy way out, just kind of going with the flow, just making outright bad choices, doing things that she should not have done. We are not given all the details. It just goes, this lady was a disappointment. She was a sinful woman. She would have easily been thrown out. But the Pharisee was about a different thing. In his mind, he was like, yep, this Jesus fella, if he was a real prophet, he would know what type of woman she is, what a disappointment she is. She's a bad woman. He wouldn't even let her touch him, but he does. So you know what? Jesus is a fake. He's a disappointment. That's what's going on in his mind. While this lady continues to kind of wash his feet with her tears, wipe it with her hair, Jesus picks up on this, of what Simon is thinking. And he says, Simon, I want to ask you something. If a banker has two people that owe him money, one owes him $100,000, basically a mortgage, right? Multi-year. Another person owes him $5,000. Not nothing, but certainly not too bad, right? Neither person can handle their loan. Neither can repay. Their bank accounts are zero. In mercy, the banker says, I'm going to forgive 100% of your loan, both of you. Which of those two will love the banker more? Simon says, well, of course, the one that got forgiven $100,000. My goodness, that changes his life, right? That's an amazing amount. And Jesus says, you are right. And that's exactly what's going on here. This woman who has been washing my feet with her tears is doing it out of love and gratitude because her many sins have been forgiven. And so she loves much. Her life was a big, fat disappointment. Broken, going nowhere, having no standing with anyone. But somewhere along the line, she came across Jesus. Jesus didn't declare a judgment on her, but brought new life, brought her back from the dead, redeemed her, forgave her, and said, you are still worth what God has made you for. There is a new life for you. And so she stands in this very weird place of washing Jesus' feet with her tears and wiping it with her hair. For many of us that are here today, we're not here just out of religious duty. Her story is our story. We know what that is, to be at a place where we were the dead end, where our choices and our lives have broken down. We got where we did not know how we got there or how to go out of it. But then we met the one who says, I forgive you, and I will make you right. And so while it's a picture of a woman, I'm there at his feet, weeping in gratitude and thankfulness, because I have been restored. To put it another way, as Jesus used in another story, he says, because my daughter was lost and is now found. She was dead and is alive again. That's what the story is about, is understanding what Jesus has done in her life. That's what this church is about. It really is the only thing that we offer. It's not about the music. It's not about a slick presentation. It's not about the sweet treats or the coffee. Not even these really nice banners. We got one thing. We've got Jesus. And for many of us, we know the truth of we have gone from life as disappointment, us as disappointment, to being people forgiven and set right with God. Doesn't mean that our lives are perfect. Doesn't mean that we are perfect. We're all in process. But there is a major difference of going, we now know the one who loves us, and he is at work in us, and his forgiveness sets us right. So that's what today is for you. Maybe you are hearing this for the first time. Maybe you've heard it lots of times and have just kind of gone, yeah, whatever. I wonder what your gap is, what gnaws at you, and how do you try to cover it up? You can continue to medicate, place those bets. Maybe someday it will make you happy. Or you can come to the one who gave his life, who paid your debt, who was broken for our brokenness, and then was raised to life to say, you are forgiven. You are made clean. You were dead, but I have made you alive. If you're ready to take that step, more than my words, that you're hearing God's words in your ears, in your heart, to say, yes, I want what that woman has. All it takes is a prayer. He's already done the great deed. He stands ready to offer it, to give it to us. We need to just receive it. If you're ready to take that step, pray with me. Pray with me this simple prayer. Jesus, thank you for loving me. Thank you for paying my debt, forgiving me for all my wrongs, all my disappointments. Forgive me and make me right. Help me to follow you and belong to you, come home to you for the rest of my days. Amen. If you've prayed that prayer today, I want you to come talk to me or talk to Matt. Or even if you're just kind of wrestling with that and you just need someone to talk to. There are many that you can talk to, but Matt and I are easily identifiable. But make this an Easter, not just kind of a come and go and, yeah, it happened. Make this a day that changes the rest of your life.